Okay, so if we go back and look for a second at the Heroes Inventory program, remember that one where we had an array of string items in our inventory, and we saw there was um, some limitations there in using an array because we one thing we had to do was we had to set aside a specific amount of space. Like we just have exactly 10 items, or if we used this form here of initializing with 3 items, you can't add a fourth item here because you haven't allocated enough space for it. So there was kind of a weird limitation that way. And another thing is that um, arrays didn't have the nice methods that, like for example, like the string object had, where you could tell the size. So we had to use this weird size of stuff to find the number of elements in the array, and but there is a way, actually, a nice way of overcoming the problem, the limitation of having to have a set. I mean, there are some advantages here, but there are ways of getting around having a set um, uh, number of um, items in a collection. So let's take a look at how that works. So here's a, oops, let me get that back up again. So here's a Heroes Inventory 2.0, and in this one we're going to use this object called vector. So we're including the vector header here, and you'll see it's kind of this weird way of declaring the vector object. It says vector, and then there are these angle brackets, so it's like a less than sign and a greater than sign, enclosing string. And what this is saying is I'm going to have a collection of string objects. Okay, so you can collect different kinds of objects in here. I think we could do like ints, or yeah, I mean, you could have different kinds of things here. But in this case, we have a string. And another thing that's nice about, so one of the things that's nice about vectors is we're saying, okay, we have a collection of string objects, and we have methods that go with vector objects, and one of them is this pushback method. And what this does is it just puts an element on the back of the at the back of a vector. So since there's nothing initially, there's nothing in this vector called inventory. When we push back sword, that just puts it in the 0th position. When we push back armor, it's like putting it at the end of the line. So sword is in the 0 position, so armor gets the position 1, and shield is in position 3. Okay. Now we have this nice size method, just like we had with string, and this will tell us, since there have been 3 things that have been pushed onto the vector, size is going to be 3. Okay, so that's kind of nice. We can go through and use size in a loop the way we've used it before to loop through a string. We can loop through a vector by checking to see that I is less than the size. And we can index into it just like you can index into a string or an array, but you can index into a vector. Let's see, what else do we have in here? We can do the replacing an object. Again, this is something you could do in an array, but you can also do it in a vector or a string. Okay, here we're using the size business again. Okay, so, and then here there's nothing Nothing new here. We could have done this with an array. We could have done this with an array, because here we're saying inventory 0 is a string object, and string objects have size methods. Here's another thing, though. Here's something you can do with vectors that you can't do with arrays. This says inventory.popBack. And what that does is it just pops out the well, it says pop back, so it pops out whatever was at the back of the list. So shield was the last thing in the vector, so that's what would be popped out. And then here we have your items, inventory size again. So and again, now if we do size, because we've popped one of these guys out, now our size is only going to be, we're only going to have 2 objects. So we'll just go through 0 and 1 and then fall out of the loop. And then this says you were robbed of all your possessions. We have a clear, just like with string, you have a clear, and you have an empty method. You have a clear and an empty method with vectors. Okay, so again, stuff you can't do with arrays. Yeah, so the nice thing about vectors is they grow as you need them to grow, which arrays don't do. You have all these nice little methods and functions that you can do. They're even like methods for searching and sorting and stuff like that, which are really nice. Main disadvantages are there's some overhead needed memory-wise, because you have other stuff you have to do to adjust the size of a vector, right? If you can, for an array, you can allocate a definite amount of space, and then you don't have to worry about moving things around in memory or putting pointers to different places in memory as you need more room. So there are there are memory issues just for initial setup, and then as the vector grows, there are issues that come up. And vectors might not be available on some game console systems too, so that's another thing just to be aware of. But there are a lot of nice features about vectors, and so it's a good thing to know about.